So let's start. And I want to start with a question. Not the right question, I'll get to that, but the wrong one. The one that has shaped decades of thinking about neurodivergent people and caused enormous harm in the process. The question is this: what is wrong with this person? That question is embedded so deeply in how we approach neurodivergent experience that most people don't even notice it's a question. It just feels like the obvious starting point. Someone is struggling, someone is in crisis, someone is burnt out or shutting down or exploding or withdrawing. And the immediate reflex in healthcare, in education, in families, in services is to look at the individual and ask, what is the problem inside them? And from that question follows an entire architecture of response: assessment, diagnosis, intervention, treatment, skills training, coping strategies, behavior plans, all of it aimed at the person, all of it asking the individual to change, adapt, manage, perform, contain. And I want to be really direct about this. That approach has failed us consistently, systemically, at enormous cost to the people it claimed to be helping. Not because the people designing those interventions are necessarily malicious, though sometimes power dynamics are exactly that, but because they started with the wrong question. And if your question is wrong, your answers will be wrong, no matter how sophisticated your methods. So what's the right question? The right question is this: what conditions is this person living inside? And what does the ecosystem around them need to change? That shift, a single reorientation, is what the ecosystemic model is built on. Stay with me for a moment, because I want to use an analogy that I think is genuinely useful here and not just as decoration, as a way of thinking. Ecology, the study of living systems. In ecology, no organism exists in isolation. The health of any living thing is inseparable from the conditions surrounding it. Take a plant. We don't assess the health of a plant by looking only at the plant. We look at the soil, the light, the water, the temperature, the presence of other organisms, the fungi in the soil, insects, competing vegetation. We understand that what the plant does, how it grows or fails to grow, whether it thrives or struggles, is a product of all those interacting variables. The plant is not separate from its ecosystem, it's part of it. Now apply that thinking to neurodivergent people. When an autistic person is in burnout, and I mean real burnout, the kind where getting out of bed feels impossible, where every sensory input is an assault, where the social mask has finally completely collapsed, we do not understand that burnout by looking only at the person. We have to look at the soil. We have to look at the light. What demands have been pressing on this person and for how long? What sensory environments have they been required to function inside? What relationships have been draining rather than replenishing? What systems have been telling them through every interaction that the way they naturally exist in the world is a problem? Burnout is not a personal failure. It's an ecosystemic consequence. The ecosystemic model, which I have been developing alongside various collaborators, breaks this down into three interconnected levels of environment, each one nested inside the other, each one affecting and being affected by the others. So let's go through them. The first level is the body mind. This is what's happening inside: interoceptive signals, nervous system states, the residue of past traumas held in the body, fatigue, pain, hunger, shutdown, the monotropic tunnel pulling your whole attentional system into depth, or the fragmented scatter of a monotropic split. Sensory experience, not as a neutral backdrop to your life, but as a constant, active, and relentless stream of information that your body mind is processing all the time. And this is the crucial thing about this level. Just because distress appears in the body mind does not mean it originates here. The body mind is a receiver as much as it is a generator. It's shaped constantly and profoundly by everything pressing in from the environments around it. When we only ever treat the body mind, we are treating the signal without addressing the source. The second level is the immediate environment. This is the daily texture of a person's life, the sensory qualities of the spaces they inhabit, the relationships they navigate, the expectations placed on them at work, at school, at home. In every social encounter, the routines or the absence of them, the demands that stack up across a day, each one requiring something, each one taking something until the account is empty and there is nothing left. This is the level at which distress becomes most visible. It is also the level at which it is most frequently misread. What gets labeled as behavior is usually communication. What gets framed as non-compliance is usually the body mind saying, I cannot do this right now. Not right now, not in this form, not in this environment. The third level is systems and power, and this is the one we talk about the least, the most invisible, and in many ways the most consequential. Institutions, policies, services, the structures that demand whose needs are legible and whose are not. The ideologies baked into healthcare and education and social care, the ones that decide what counts as normal and what counts as acceptable, what counts as a life worth supporting. This is the level that shapes the second level, which shapes the first, which shapes the person's experience. When a child is punished for stimming, that's not an individual interaction. It's a site where institutional power presses down through an immediate environment into a body mind and leaves a mark. When an autistic adult can't access the support they need because they present too well in a clinical environment, that's not a gap. That's a system doing what it was designed to do for people who are not us. So, three levels: body mind, immediate environment, systems, and power, nested inside each other, interacting constantly, co producing the experience we call well being or stress. That is the ecosystemic model. I want to bring in a concept here that I've been drawing on in my recent thinking because I think it illuminates something important about the shape of autistic experience and about why the wrong frameworks cause so much damage. There's a philosopher called Gilles Deleuze, and I know, bear with me, who, with his collaborator Felix Guattari, developed a concept called the rhizome. The rhizome is a contrast to the tree. The tree is the shape that Western thought loves. It has a single trunk branching upwards with clear hierarchy, clear levels, and clear taxonomy. Everything flows from the root through the trunk out to the branches. It's orderly, linear, and organized. The rhizome is completely different. Think of how grass spreads, or ginger roots, or mycelium. It moves in all directions at once. It has no fixed center, no singular point of origin. It connects, breaks apart, goes underground, resurfaces somewhere completely unexpected. It is multiple, nonlinear, and resistant to hierarchy. Autistic cognition is rhizomatic. It doesn't move in tidy sequential flows. It branches unpredictably. It forms dense and passionate connections between things that the neurotypical world has decided are not supposed to connect. It loops back, it goes underground into deep monotropic tunnel and resurfaces somewhere else entirely. When we try to assess and support or teach autistic people using arborescent frameworks, hierarchical, linear, sequential, we are measuring a rhizome by the standard of a tree and declaring the rhizome broken. The rhizome doesn't need to be straightened. It needs an environment that knows how to grow alongside it. And that brings me to what I think is one of the most important ideas in the ecosystemic model, and honestly, in how I understand what neurodivergent community actually is. Beneath every forest is a mycelial network, a vast underground web of fungal threads connecting root to root, tree to tree, organism to organism. The forest is not a collection of isolated individuals competing for resources. At the level of soil, it is a networked community, sharing nutrients, transmitting stress signals, supporting one another through scarcity and disturbance. When autistic people find each other, really find each other, something mycelial happens. We don't just exchange information, we recognize each other at a level that bypasses the social scripts that fail us everywhere else. We form what I call neurokin, and we transmit something that is genuinely, practically vital: the knowledge that we are not alone in our experience, that the problem was never us, that our ways of being in the world have coherence and value and dignity. The mycelial metaphor matters because it is networked, not hierarchical. There is no central hub through which all connection must pass. It's distributed, resilient. When one node is damaged, the network finds another path. That is what genuine peer support looks like, not a professional dispensing expertise downwards to a grateful recipient. A lateral network of people who know the terrain because they live in it, sharing what they have, holding each other when the ecosystem gets hostile. Here is what ecology also teaches us. Every organism, given the right conditions, will do what it is built to do. The rhizome spreads, the mycelium networks, the tree reaches toward light, not because it's trying harder, not because it made better choices, but because the conditions are right. Neurodivergent people do not need to be fixed. We need the right conditions. We need environments where monochromic depth is allowed and not constantly interrupted, overridden, or punished, where sensory needs are taken seriously rather than dismissed as oversensitivity, where communication differences are met with curiosity rather than correction, where the full range of neurodivergent experience, including the parts that make the mainstream uncomfortable, is understood as a legitimate expression of a different neurology navigating a world that was not built for it. We need communities that function like mycelial networks, lateral, distributed, nourishing, held together by genuine recognition rather than institutional management. We need systems that stop treating neurodivergent distress as evidence of individual deficit and start treating it as an ecosystemic signal, a signal that says something in the relationship between this person and their environment needs to change. The ecosystemic model is not just a framework for understanding distress. It's a framework for asking what flourishing actually requires for us in our actual lives, in our actual body minds, in our actual ecosystems. And that matters enormously. The medical model asks, what is wrong with this person? The ecosystemic model asks, what conditions is this person living inside? What does this ecosystem need in order to change? That is not a small shift in language, it's a complete reorientation of how we understand well-being, of how we understand distress, of what we think support is actually for. The forest is not just the trees. It is the soil, the roots, the mycelium, the light, the water, the climate, the organisms in relationship with one another across time. Neurodivergent well-being is no different. It grows, or fails to grow, in relation to everything surrounding it. And that is why the environment we build for each other matters so much. Every neurodivergent space we create, every time we hold space for someone who has been told their way of being is a problem, every piece of knowledge we share across the mycelial network, it all contributes to an ecosystem that is capable of sustaining us. And that's what I'm trying to build. That's what NeuroHub community is trying to build. And if any of that resonated with you today, I want to invite you to be a part of it. NeuroHub Community is a neurodivergent-led organization built by us, for us. Everything we do is grounded in identity-first, right-based values, and in the understanding that distress is contextual, not pathological. We don't view neurodivergent people as problems to be fixed. We view systems, environments, and relationships as things that can be changed. And this is what we offer. I'm going to be specific because I want you to be able to find what's actually useful for you. If you're looking for one-to-one support, if you want a space to explore your identity, your challenges, and your goals without being pathologized or talked down to, our individual consultancy and mentoring services are available now. We also work with families who want to genuinely understand and support a neurodivergent person in their lives. You can find out more at the links in the description of this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about the ideas I've talked about today, the ecosystemic model, autistic identity, burnout, and what it actually means to support neurodivergent well-being, we have courses built from lived experience, not from clinical handbooks. Our courses are available through the NeuroHub community website, and they're designed to meet you where you are. We also have a growing library of mindfulness resources, the Mindfully Divergent program, which is not your standard mindfulness. These resources are developed with neurodivergent body minds in mind, specifically and intentionally. And if you're a professional working alongside neurodivergent people, perhaps a therapist, a teacher, a social worker, or a GP, we have a professional gateway that offers training grounded in neurodivergent-led frameworks, because the fields need better frameworks, and we have them. Finally, and I am always excited about this, we have our 2026 Autistic Mental Health Conference coming up. It's an annual event, and it is exactly what it sounds like: autistic people talking about autistic mental health from inside the experience, not the sanitized, palatable, please don't make the professionals uncomfortable framing, the real stuff. All the information is on our website. I will share the link to everything below in a description. And you can also join our Substack community at news.neurohub.org, or you can join our Heartbeat community at connect.neurohubcommunity.org. That's where we publish longer pieces, engage in social connection, have regular Zoom meetups several times a week. We go into depth on the ideas that we've covered today, and we live them. So thank you for listening, genuinely. This podcast exists because the ideas matter and you matter. So take care of your ecosystem, and I'll see you next time.